And a main speaker, so please remember to be polite and keep your phones off and stay seated during both of our speakers. Now help me welcome Paulie, our 10-minute speaker.
My name is Paulie. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Mikki, for asking me at the very last second to be your 10-minute speaker. And I'm sitting here thinking how much I love Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And that is a far cry from how I used to feel about Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date is September 1st, 2016. Thank you. I have fans. I was never happy to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was always the guy that sat in the back, showed up late, left early. I didn't really want to talk to anybody. I had just promised my mom or my dad or my girlfriend at the time or one of my siblings that I would go to meetings, and I didn't want to lie. I can remember going to meetings with a pint under my front seat, and I would crack it the minute I got out. Before I even put the key in the ignition, I just was trying to appease people by coming to AA. I didn't want anything you had to sell. I knew I had a drinking problem, but I thought I could take care of it myself, and it was weak to go to these meetings. And I remember I would go find meetings like far away from my hometown. I would want to drive at least a half hour because I was scared crapless that I would see somebody I knew and they would know, right? And then I would say, well, if they're at a meeting, they're probably an alcoholic too. But then I'm like, well, maybe they're just there on a court card, and then they're going to tell everybody I was there on my own, right? So I had all these reasons to not be into Alcoholics Anonymous. And after a while, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous the last few times. My part of my story is I get sober for, a length of time, 2 years. Then I would get drunk for a little while. Then my ass would fall off and I'd be back. And then I got 3 years once. And then I decided I was okay. And then at one point I went 10 years without drinking. First 5 in Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I realized I didn't need you people. And I remember I moved up here with my wife. Hi, Jenny. And my wife and I moved up here with her. It was just us at first. Our kids followed us. But I remember I went to like 2 meetings in Prescott Valley, right? And they were morning meetings. And after the second day, I remember coming home and saying, you know what? AA up here sucks, and I don't need it. I can do this on my own. And I never went to another meeting. And then I stayed dry for 5 years. I was miserable. My family was pretty miserable too, because I was a tyrant. Where's John? I was a tyrant in my own home. Everything had to be done the way I wanted it. If I didn't like what you were doing, I wasn't afraid to yell at you. And I was very demanding. And I was that way at work and at home, And I remember when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous before, right? When I realized that, I needed some help. I obviously couldn't do this on my own. And I only came to Alcoholics Anonymous to learn how to stop drinking. I didn't want anything else from you. I didn't want any spiritual program. I didn't want any principles. I just wanted to be able to not drink. And, so I would not drink for a while, and I would slowly weed myself out of meetings. And sooner or later, the idea of a drink came to mind, and I was defenseless, right? I would find a reason to drink. And at first, I would slow play it and control it. And, I've heard it before. I didn't make it up. Mikki, I didn't make this one up either. Mikki has a saying. I'll let her say it, but I steal it sometimes. But if I control my drinking, I can't enjoy it. If I enjoy my drinking, I can't control it. Right? And that was it. If I'd be miserable nursing, I'm not going to drink more than 4 beers, and I'd be pissy all night, you know. I mean, if I just cut the reins loose, then I might be gone for days, you know. There were nights my wife would be wondering where I was for days, you know, calling every hotel room in the town we lived in, seeing if I was holed up somewhere, you know. That's the kind of stuff that I did when I drank. But when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous this time, I was so broken. I was actually, I mean, I think back on it. I had more than a couple screws loose. I was insane, right? I thought I was fooling everybody. I thought I had things under control, and my life was a train wreck. And a lot of you know my story. I drove off a cliff, literally. I was near dead when I got to the hospital. I spent 7 weeks in the hospital. And when I got out, I finally realized that although I thought I wanted to die, suicide was an option shortly before I got here. I had thought a lot about it. I had even attempted. But after I'd been out of that hospital and sober for a minute, I realized I didn't want to die, that I had a lot to live for. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table. This was the turning point for me, in case you didn't know, Jennifer. Couldn't drive. I physically couldn't drive, so I was getting to meetings by the help of my friend John and a couple other members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this one day I didn't have a ride to a meeting, and my wife had to take time off. She had to take a leave of absence to care for me because I needed care. And I remember she was sitting at the kitchen table reading a magazine. And why women sit at a table and read a magazine, I don't know, but that's what she was doing. And I remember I walked up and I said, "Hey, can you drive me up to the meeting and I'll get a ride home." And she closed the magazine and she looked up at me and she said, "Why, Paulie?" "Well, because I want to go to a meeting. I need to go to a meeting." And she said, "No, you don't. Alcoholics Anonymous does not work for you. We've tried it before. It's okay." I mean, she was so nice. It was scary. "It's okay. We'll figure something else out, but you don't have to go to meetings anymore." And for me, that was I had waited my whole life for someone to tell me, "Oh, I good on time? Dave?" Okay. I waited my whole life for someone to tell me I didn't have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I would have jumped at the chance. And here my wife was telling me I don't need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous anymore. And I was scared. You know, I was like, and I don't know where the words came from because I'm not that smart. But I said, "Jenny, I know Alcoholics Anonymous hasn't worked for me because I haven't been really doing it, right? And I know it hasn't worked for me, but I've seen it work in so many other people over the years. Guys that I got sober with in 2000 were sober 16 years when I drove off a cliff, right? I knew it worked. I knew I just wasn't doing it. I wasn't in. And so that was the day I decided I'm going to do whatever the book says, the way it says it, and I'm going to do whatever my sponsor tells me. And so that was that surrender, I think, for me. And since then, my life has slowly been, actually not even slowly, my life has gotten better. I see things, I like the book A New Pair of Glasses, right? After a certain amount of time, I started feeling good about things, and before I ever had alcohol, I was never happy with anything. I was that discontented, self-conscious, scared kid my whole life, and alcohol fixed it. Alcohol made me the opposite. I was scared to death. And then I took a drink, and I was the opposite. I was fearless without a drink. As soon as I took a drink, as soon as I had a few drinks, I was the toughest guy in the room. And I come in here, and I know so many people when I come into meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I used to put on a show. So unfortunately for most of you, this is the real me. I'm kind of all over the place, and I'm kind of boisterous, and I get excited, and I kind of say off the wall things. And before, I would be in the back. If I was in a bar, I would just be mad dogging somebody all night with my mouth shut. I wasn't very social. After I'd been drinking a while, I drank by myself. The last few years, I drank in hotel rooms, I drank in my bedroom, I drank any place I could, but I didn't drink with you, right? I didn't drink with anybody. Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm gonna talk all night. Oh, I gotta stop. So Alcoholics Anonymous is giving me a life beyond my wildest dreams, and that's the truth, right? I have friends like Mikki that blindside me when I walk in and say, "You're my 10-minute speaker," right? And I'm not uncomfortable doing that anymore. Before I used to scare the crap out of me, Travis. But thank you so much for being here, and I'm sure Mikki will do a great job because she's wonderful.
And now our main speaker, Mikki. Welcome, Mikki. Give her a big hand.
I'm Mikki and I'm an alcoholic. Gotta gauge how close I need to be because my husband says when I get excited I get louder. So I don't want to scream at everybody. So thank you, Paulie, for being blindsided. I love that about Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that we talk about suggestions a lot, but when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, it never sounded like a suggestion. And I'm thankful for that today, right? And if you have kids in the room, thank you for bringing them because that's fantastic. I'm sitting over there and I'm thinking, when I first got sober, there was this club I got sober in, and there was this guy, Lee, who had a 2-year-old, and he would bring her to the noon meeting every day, and she would pass out the pamphlets through the meeting. And it was just always such a joy, right, to watch kids grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to raise my kids in Alcoholics Anonymous. And thankfully they call Paulie the donut man, because Paulie just shows up with donuts. I'm pretty sure they're going to grow up and realize that they don't have as many uncles as they think they do. But that's the gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. So my sobriety date is November 28, 2012. I'm surprised too, it's good. Congratulations to everybody who took a chip, and the newcomer. That's a really hard one to go up for. I'm always amazed at conferences or stuff where people go up and get the book that they give out to somebody who has like 24 hours, because I would have not done that. 1, I wouldn't have gone. 2, I would definitely have not walked up to a stage like this and let you know I needed help. And welcome from Atlanta. My best friend I got sober with is in Augusta, so Georgia's fun. But I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was a lot like Paulie. Well, I wasn't quiet. I was the opposite of Paulie. Never mind. I was the kid that was a little too loud, a little too aggressive, a little too much. And I had 2 fantastic parents that did the best they could with what they were given. I am one of 8. Most of my siblings are adopted. My parents fostered over 100 kids by the time I turned 12. So we had kids coming in and out, and chaos was what my mom thrived under. And so I do really well in chaos. That's the natural, my natural setting. I succeed well. And growing up, we had, there's no way, looking back at my life, there's no one thing to say why, when I took that first drink at 13, 14 years old, why that switch was just turned on, right? There was never a time period where I put alcohol in my body where I didn't say I need to get to oblivion. Because I had been using other things to fill the spiritual malady that I have for years prior to 14. I played competitive sports excessively. And by that I mean like I'm the 8-year-old that's running like 21 miles a week, and my parents are driving me down to Phoenix 6 days a week to play down there, and I'm playing all over the United States, and that is what filled my spiritual malady and made me feel okay for a really long time. And then it stopped working, and I was still super uncomfortable in my skin. And I couldn't explain it. Like, I would look around at other people, at the people I grew up with, and it just seemed like they knew how to live life and not be so wound up inside that you're so uncomfortable you want to tear your own skin off. You know, and that was my like default setting, right? I figured God was giving out handbooks when people were born, and he just forgot mine, you know, and I just didn't know the secret that all these people knew to how to like go to school and like live life without having this pent up anxiety in my chest at all times, right? Or the hamster wheel of I need to figure out what you want to see so I can act that way, so I can make sure that I get what I need from you, right? Because that's where my head is always running, and from a young age, you know. And my selfish, self-centered nature came out really early in life, right? I'm one of many, but like when I was born, I was the first girl, and I honestly was oblivious to the fact that my parents didn't have my brother just to fulfill my needs when I needed snacks. That wasn't the case, but I thought the world revolved around me, right? And that carried on throughout my life, and I was just oblivious, right? Like I'm just floating through life, and I started drinking at 14, and I realized after that first drink, and it didn't go well. My first drink was in Laughlin, and I ended up running through a casino naked and almost trying to jump into the river, and then my brothers had to like carry me off, and it was a whole deal. By the end of the day, well, in the morning, everybody was mad at me, and I didn't know why. And on the drive home, I was super sick, and all I could think was, when is the next time I can do this, right? And that's not normal. Normal people don't react to alcohol like that. But that was my way, right? And I never knew why. Because I grew up with people, and they were able to drink and party on weekends, and then show up to sporting events and not have to drink through them. I was a daily drinker from the time I drank at 14. And then I did everything in my power to manipulate my life circumstances so I could continue to drink like that. And I threw away a lot of things. You know, I had a full ride scholarship to North Carolina for soccer, and I threw that away because you can't be drunk on a college soccer field, I guess. They frown on it. But I'm just kind of going through life trying to set up to where I know I can live my life and drink the way I want to drink. And I get really good ideas in that moment. Most moments, right? I get really good ideas. And at like 17, I get a really good idea that I'm just going to marry my drug dealer because he drinks like I drink, and he won't have any problems. Right? And he's easy to manipulate, so it'll be fine. And so at 18, I got married. And it took about a year and a half before he started asking questions like, well, why do you have to drink every day? Which I thought was really judgy, especially for his circumstance. And can't you just limit it to the weekends? And why can't you get a job? Because I really didn't want a job either. I just wanted to drink the way I wanted to drink and have somebody else do the life stuff. And he frowned upon that. But as soon as he started asking questions, he had to go, right? Because that's my MO, right? You get in front of my drinking, and you're obviously the problem. So I've got to leave this situation. And I did that with my family. As soon as they started, they never directly asked me about my drinking, because I am not a friendly drunk. I am not a happy-go-lucky drunk. I am the person in the room that will explode. I did anger management for the first year of my sobriety. And when I moved to Prescott, I was really improved, but you all said I was still angry, so it was a refined version. But I'm that angry person that makes people flinch when they get too loud, right? Like, that's the type of drunk I am. I'm not a nice human. And so he starts asking questions. He's got to go. And I figure I get another one of my good ideas. And I used outside issues. So I was driving a lot to Mexico. And I really, to the core of my being, thought, I'm just spending too much time in the car. And that is why my life is falling apart. So I just needed to move closer to Mexico so I don't have to spend as much time in the car. Not once during the burned relationships or the burned bridges or the friendships lost did I ever think that, oh, my drinking could be the problem. Because like our literature talks about, drinking was my solution on how to live life on a daily basis and take a deep breath. And nobody's going to take it. Like, this is the only thing I know that works. And so I decided I'm going to move to Tucson. And I moved to Tucson, and within 6 months, I burn every bridge I've made, and I get another good idea to try to be a criminal. And I'm not a very good criminal. I'm not as bad as my husband. If you've heard his story, he's much worse. But I'm not a very good one. And it turns out that somebody starts looking for me. So I gotta get out of town, and I gotta get out of town quick. And I drive back up to Prescott, because I'm from Prescott, I was raised here. And I am sitting in my parents' living room. No, it was their office. And my mom's sitting there, and it's a God thing, right? You get all these little moments, and now I can look back and see them as little God moments. But my mom had went into detox a week prior to me coming up there and sitting in her office, trying to lay low long enough to not get caught. Because they weren't very nice people that I tried to rob. They weren't very forgiving. But I'm sitting there, and she goes, you should go to detox, and we'll figure it out when you get out. And I don't know why that sitting there, I said yes. Yes came out of my mouth before I even had time to process. Now I look back and I'm like, it had to be God. Because I never once thought about getting sober or stop drinking. I never thought about slowing down, or I thought about maybe timing my drinking better so people didn't find out, or not getting, pretty much timing people, or just leaving people. That's my MO, right? I'm gone. And I said yes, and I end up in a psych ward down in Scottsdale. And I don't know about you, but usually when I say yes to something that I don't want to do, I usually have demands. So I wanted a fuzzy blanket if I was going to have to go into detox. That was my demand. So I have 2 grocery bags full of clothes, which is really just dirty clothes that have been in my car for a while, and a fuzzy blanket to go into the psych ward. And I learned 2 things there. They had a CA meeting that was brought in every Friday night. And there was a woman there. I've never seen her again. I don't even remember her name, but she would carry around the big book. And she walked up to me and she said, let's go to the meeting. They have all of the answers. Everything you need is in this book. And we went to the meeting. They didn't even have it though, because they had a code gray where they would somebody was freaking out and they'd bring out a sack They run it in there, and they swoop him up like a rabbit, and they carry him off. And never got to see the meeting. There was never even a meeting. But it stuck with me, right? Like all of the answers I need is in this some kind of book. I didn't have one, but I knew there was a book. And my parents lived like a block from Safe Harbor. So when I got out of that detox, I was given an option to go to treatment. And I wasn't here in Prescott. I was given two options. I was given Southern California, and I was given Boston. Keep in mind it is November, and my current wardrobe is Tucson weather, and like working at a sports bar Tucson weather. So my attire is not ready for Boston in November, and I knew I was going to freeze to death in Boston. So I was like, Southern California sounds really nice. I thought I was just going to go lay low for a little while. I figured the drug dealer wouldn't find me if I was in treatment. He would forget about me, and I could go back to doing what I wanted to do, right? So I get to this halfway house, sober living, with 12 women, 3 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms. And I've realized that I have definitely overreacted to my drinking. I definitely don't belong there. I don't belong in treatment because I am nowhere near as crazy as these people. And I'm definitely not an alcoholic. I'm 20 years old. There's no way I'm an alcoholic. And thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous and the members in Alcoholics Anonymous that go by the book, right? Because they let me sit in your meetings, drink your coffee, and I went to the meetings because they played hacky sack before the meeting and they played pinochle after. So I knew if I went to the meeting, I could play hacky sack before the meeting and pinochle after. And the guys I was playing with were in drug court, so they had to go in the meeting because they had to get their paper signed. So I followed the crowd, right? It's the only reason I went to meetings. And luckily, there was some people in that group that knew the big book really well. And my first sponsor was in that group, and let me wait it out. And I sat in these rooms for 90 days, and I watched. And I wasn't going to stay, and I didn't know how I had gotten 30 days or 60 days. I didn't really know what was going on. And about 90 days sober, I'm in this halfway house, and I don't know about you guys, but when I don't have God and I don't have Alcoholics Anonymous, my character defects run riot. And they tend to bring out homicidal tendencies in others. And so somebody tried to cut my brakes. And, I mean, it's funnier than, you guys can wake up a little bit, it's okay. So somebody tried to cut my brakes, and I wake up one day, and my headlights don't work. And my car wasn't in great shape. I had a really good newcomer car. It was a 92 Dodge Shadow. And there was a gasoline leak, and the windows didn't roll down, and some lights worked, some lights didn't work. Some things were being held on by bob wire, but it ran. And the lights worked the night before. And so I took it to a friend in the program, and he looked at it, and he looks up, and he said, "Who did you piss off?" Now, I've only been in California for about 90 days, and I haven't been drinking. And I'm a delight when I'm not drinking. So there's no way I've pissed off anybody in this short period of time. And he goes, "Somebody tried to cut your brakes and cut the wrong line." And in that moment, I realized I either needed to do what you people in Alcoholics Anonymous were saying to do, or I might as well somebody was going to either take me out or I was going to take myself out, right? Because I don't know if you guys have ever been dry, but I was real uncomfortable, right? And so I got a sponsor, and we met once a week, and we read through the book. And when we got to a step, we worked it. And after that third step, I got up off my knees and I realized it was no longer my job to correct my life. It's no longer Mikki's job, right? I'm really grateful that the people that I got sober around were really into service and they were excited about Alcoholics Anonymous. And there wasn't, I don't know if they just forgot about the requirements to do service work or if they just didn't really care that much, but there was a lot to do in the first 60 days of sobriety. Like we would go into H&I at 60 days. We would go in and speak to people, and we would take meetings into places, and a lot of it was just get in the car. Just get in the car. Because they definitely didn't want to get in my car. They wanted to drive their car. And when we started working through the steps and going through 4 and 5, at 4 I realized that I am the common denominator in all of the disaster in my life, right? Drugs and alcohol were a symptom of a bigger problem. And I've done all of these things and people have stepped on my toe, and I've stepped on other people's toes and they have retaliated because that's all they know. And that I am a tornado in people's lives when I don't have God and I don't have the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's just what I do. It's my natural setting. And so going through 4 and 5 and then 6 and 7 and then at 9 I got to make amends. I got to contact my ex-husband and clear that street, which I was thankful for. Years later he ended up it was like 4 years ago, he ended up committing suicide, and I had cleared my street with his family enough that they called me, and they let me know, and because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I still get to show up, and I still get to do the right thing. And then through 10, 11, and 12, I've learned that 90% of the freedom in Alcoholics Anonymous is in that 12th step. And through sponsorship and sponsoring women and sitting down with people, whether I'm sponsoring them or not. My first sponsor hated when I called him sponsor. And he did not, he said it wasn't in the book. You can't call me that. You can call me a spiritual advisor, or you can call me Buckles. Buckles is the name. But don't call me sponsor. And he was a wonderful human being, and he was excited about Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was doing service. And so at about a year sober, I wanted to stay in Southern California because I definitely did not want to come to Prescott. And I'm doing everything in my power to stay there. And he reminded me that I needed to be willing to do God's will because it's no longer my choice. And as soon as I got willing, I had like a job, a place to live, and I was enrolled in school out here. And I had spent like 6 months trying not to do that because I like to hold on to things real tight. And so I move out to Prescott at about a year sober, and I know that I can do what I did in the beginning to get connected to Alcoholics Anonymous. I also know that Prescott AA is not done correctly, and I can slowly take it over one meeting at a time through service. And so that's what I do. I actually ended up the secretary of this meeting, trying to take it over. It was a very different crowd then. It was more like a football team at a strip club. You guys are very calm, but it gets me connected, and I get into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous here, and I've gotten to really learn and grow in Alcoholics Anonymous because it's been a trip, right? I've been sober longer than I used, and I've grown in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've gotten to go through hard things. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, and Paulie really loves this saying, I learned it early on, don't let the life that AA gave you take you away from your AA way of life. Because I found a family here and a way of life. Like the steps and Alcoholics Anonymous is a way of life. And as soon as I stop doing those and stop showing up and stop saying yes when people call me, I don't get any of those. And I have a beautiful life today. I have 3 boys. I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old. I met my husband in a service commitment, so be careful. Yeah, I was pregnant like a year later. I got conned into that one too, you know. I was supposed to just show up for a potluck. Turned out it was not a potluck, it was a committee meeting. And then all of a sudden, all I hear is, Mikki will do it. There was never a suggestion, but thank God I'm not in charge, you know, because I truly believe that God has moved me to where he would have me be so that I can grow in effectiveness to you, right? Because my purpose now, once going through those steps, is maximum service to God and my fellows. The rest is God's business. And so I've gotten to grow and go through hard things. And another thing that I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is that I don't ever, for a really long time, I always thought it was me against the world. It's me against the world, and that's it. That's all I get. And I'm always going to have to fight. And when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I learned that you guys will walk through anything with me, whether it's good or bad. People in Alcoholics Anonymous have walked through it with me. I was talking to Jenny before the meeting. With my first son, I got really sick. I was preeclamptic, and I had to be hospitalized. And before I went into hospital, they said, you need to get your affairs in order. Now, this is my first child. I think that it's going to go a certain way. Like, it's going to be beautiful, and God's going to be there, and I'm going to be I'm going to meditate through the pregnancy, you know. It's going to be so good. I'm going to be Gandhi by the end of this kid, okay? And I had to call my sponsor after leaving that doctor's appointment to say, hey, I need to know how to fill out a living will. And I'm 26 years old. And I'm supposed to be enjoying this thing. And what's magical at Alcoholics Anonymous is I still got to enjoy that experience and still got to enjoy the fact that he came in a little differently into the world, but it didn't mean it had to be a negative thing, right? I've had a false brain tumor once. But that was a really fun experience. It was. I don't know, there's not too many people but does anybody remember Rainey? No? God damn it. Okay, well, Rainey was going through my friend Rainey, who conned me into that CA commitment, she was going through some health things too. So we both drive down to Barrows, and I'm 22 years old, and I'm like, okay, great, God got me sober to die. Yeah, thank you. And we're driving down to the ER, and we're sitting in the ER, and we spent about 15 hours in that ER trying to figure out what was going on with me, and MRIs and tests, and we're just sitting there having the best time, and the doctors are just very confused because we're asking them, you know, do you think we could get bunk beds in the child's ward since we're so young? Like, I mean, we're not children, but we're really young, so maybe we could just slip in. We'll just get death bunk beds. It'll be fine. God's got it. And by the end of it, it was wonderful. It was a mix-up on the CAT scan. Yeah, it was a mix-up on the CAT scan. I died for about 15 hours. But God's got it, right? And I got to get married in this program. You know what I mean? My husband's one of us, and am I good on time? Yeah? Okay, because I still got more. You guys were like, if you run out of things to say, you can just stop early. And I was like, okay, you don't know me very well. Never ran out of things to say. But I got to get married in this program and have a healthy relationship. And I like to preface this with, I spent 4 years in Alcoholics Anonymous running amok within the dating scene. Because I was really trying to fit that square peg into a round hole. You know, if you'd only change a little bit, you know. And then he would start shooting dope, and that's a non-negotiable, you know. Can't fix that. I know that. That's good. I know that if I get in the ring with alcoholism, I lose. Whether you're doing it or I'm doing it, I lose. And so I get on that committee, I meet a wonderful man, and at first I think he's a newcomer, so I say no. He just got out of prison. I didn't have a lot to work with. Okay, he just got out of prison. I'm living with probation officers, and what are you going to do with that? Turns out people get sober in prison, and he had a couple years. But I finally said yes, and we've grown in. One of the things we've done in our relationship is that we get to grow physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and we do that by having 2 separate programs. I don't go to his meetings. We rarely, the only time we really go to the same meeting is if one of us is speaking. He has his group. You? Well, I guess we'd go to Paulie speaking, but only if there's donuts. But 2 minutes? Okay, cool. And I got married, and I got to live a beautiful life because of Alcoholics Anonymous and because of God. And I don't get to keep that unless I stay here. My children don't get a sober mom unless I stay here. As soon as I stop showing up here and being honest to you and telling you my mess, and or telling my sponsor my mess, she threw me under the bus for tonight, but they no longer get that. All of that's off. I know I will throw my children away quickly for another drink. I have no doubt in my mind. So I have to continue to show up, and I get to continue to come to meetings and speak and enjoy the life that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, because without you guys, there is no me. There is no my life. And today I have a beautiful life. I get to wake up at 5 a.m. and feed a baby cow, as the sun rises. Definitely not where I thought things were going. I was hoping for like a boat on a tropical place. But I guess a baby cow is fine. It's a good time. But thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and you guys have a good night.